Welcome, everybody. Hi, my name's Madeline, and I'm the energy storage manager at Sologent, and I'm so excited to introduce Sol-Ark today to talk about their battery calculator, their inverter sizing tool. We really want to do our best at Sologent and Sol-Ark to set expectations with our installers and with homeowners to make sure that the systems are performing the way you expect them and that the batteries are providing power to the loads that you need and are most important to you. So, without further ado, we're going to let Tom take it away and really emphasize how to use this tool to make sure that all of the loads are being met to your customers' needs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Brennan. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at Sol-Ark, and we we really try and do our best to. We have over 1,000 totally off-grid customers, and they use their ESS systems. They rely on them every day, and we're also in the hybrid inverter business. And with that, so we've got a lot of customers that are on grid that are either using time of use because they have different rates for peak times versus non-peak times, or they can sell back to the grid and support the grid during other times. Um, but because we've done so many off-grid installs or systems and system designs, we really understand how much power different appliances use. And so the most common problem we see in ESS installs is the battery was undersized, most likely because it was expensive. It's the most expensive part and lasts the least amount of time. And then also the inverter is often undersized um, for doing the loads. And we're also seeing more and more, people wanting to do whole home backup. And that makes it even harder. So what we're trying to do with this tool is use all our knowledge that has gone into all these off-grid installs and be able to simplify the expectations of a customer or size what it does is it sizes the batteries and the inverter based upon the loads that you're trying to do when the grid is down, or based upon the time of use if you're trying to zero your meter. So with that, I'm going to show you how there's techniques that we can use to actually decrease the size of the battery and the inverter that we need with some little bit of load management, and it's very, very effective. So with that, let me go into this. So we have a lot of us have been here. Whether you're the solar, it's usually sometimes it's a solar sales guy that says, "Hey, this is going to run your whole house," and then the installer gets there and sees, "Oh no." Um, and so anyway, the installer ends up having to come back many times because okay, we the inverter and the battery system are only so big, so we're going to have to just do a critical loads panel or sub panel that runs off the system because we're experiencing more and more outages in California, in Hawaii, in Texas, and a lot of places. Um, so the installer ends up having to go back because oh you didn't quite get this, you didn't get my bathroom on the critical loads panel, or you accidentally put the dryer on the critical loads panel and it overloads the inverter all the time. So we're always fighting this careful balance of how much can I put on the inverter and the battery system versus overloading it, and cost. So anyway, and all of us have experienced the problems of oh, it's overloaded. What do I do? Anyway, so that's why we actually pride ourselves on great customer support. So how do we get past this? Well, there's a couple different ways. I've seen people do whole home backup with two Sol-Ark 12Ks and a lot of batteries. And this is a particular pretty install. It's all on the wall. It's quite impressive. But not every, I'd say the vast majority of people cannot afford uh, two two inverters and this is 60 kilowatt hours of batteries. That's a very expensive price. If you go by average pricing, and we use average pricing on the solar calculator. So you'll see we use about a 66 cents per watt hour on the batteries. And that's kind of an industry average. And we use for the inverter, we use about I think we use about 75 cents uh, is what we end up using um, per kilowatt on the inverter. So all right. So what we're trying to do is, not everybody can afford this. So let's try and do something a little bit different, and and we're going to introduce a little bit of load management, and we're going to see that we can really maximize the battery in the inverter ESS system by not and still not overload it. So with that, let me show you an example. So here's where we've got a Solar 12K. We call it a 12K because it does 12K of input power to both the batteries and the AC loads at the same time. Its AC output is actually 9 kilowatts continuous, but it has a lot of peak power to run a lot of things. And here, what we've done is we've tried to simplify the installation by adding a 200 amp transfer switch. The Sol-Ark actually has a built-in transfer switch already of 63 amps. We've got a battery pack. Um, and what we're doing is we're supplying power to the whole main service panel. And what we're going to do is we're just going to we're going to add in some load management here. Take your pick. I think Solagent sells Lumen. So that's an option for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to get to the house and we're just going to take off the big loads. We're not going to care about the small loads. We're going to keep those always powered on all the time. And we're just going to look at, this is a pretty extensive house. So they looks like they're all electric. So they got an electric dryer, electric hot water heaters. There's two AC units. There's two ovens. They're electric. We've got a car charger, actually two. We've got a cooktop that's electric, furnace fans, pool pumps, and maybe we also have a blower for the AC or if they have natural gas. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to tap into that and break that link and go through a smart load system and then wire it back up so that this is going to control our big loads and it's going to communicate to our inverter so that the smart load management knows the priority that you've set for these loads. And also, it's going to communicate to the inverter to see what is my state of charge of the battery and how much available power do I have, so that I'm not overloading the inverter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up the tool and show you some examples of what we're going to do with it. All right. Okay, so if you go to our website, we recently did a lot of improvements. I recommend you go down the installer side. Okay. And what you'll see is the calculator. And so what you can go here is go to the calculator. Now, there's a lot of solar calculators out there that, you simply put in your bill, what's your average bill, and it'll tell you how many solar panels you want to install there. And those are fine. Those are great for figuring out exactly how much PV to install. We're not really concerned with that. That's a pretty easy task. What we're more concerned about is how do you size the batteries in the inverter so that the customer doesn't upset, get really upset later. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a zip code. So this is our zip code, for example, and you don't have to use this portion of it. This is just for sizing the PV array. So we would put in the average full-time noon hours, which is 5.5. We would put in the cost of electricity. And here it's pretty cheap. So about 11.25 or 11, whatever. And this bill is about right. And so with the average number of sun hours and how much the cost is and how much my bill is, what this does is it tells you roughly how many how many kilowatts you use per day based upon your bill. and it's also going to tell you how many kilowatts of PV you might need to install. So this is just acting like some of the other tools out there. It's just built into this one as well. Okay. But you don't have to do any of this. I'm sorry, you don't have to do any of this portion if you're just wanting to do the size of the batteries and the inverter. Okay, so let's go to this portion. Okay, so what this does is I'm going to, okay, let me explain it a little bit more. Um, and if there's some questions on the chat, please just ask them right away. I like to answer questions quickly. So if you have any questions, please bring them up and we'll address. This tool is still in beta, and while we've been using it some more, we actually are planning some enhancements. So okay, so let me explain. What we're trying to do is just size the battery and inverter for a backup scenario. What do you want to run when the grid's down? Or for self-consumption. I want to zero my meter and not because my electricity company doesn't give me much money if I sell it back to the grid during the peak times. So I want to keep it. So uh, so going down these, you'll see that a refrigerator uses about on average, a decent refrigerator uses about 2.5 kilowatt hours a day for a 24-hour period. So in this tool, we use averages for what these appliances used per day. We also have runtime kilowatts for sizing the inverter, and we also have uh, peak kilowatts, and we have high kilowatts. So let me explain what that means. A refrigerator cycles on and off every day. Um, when it's off, it's consuming maybe 5 watts. When it's on, it consumes probably somewhere about 130, 150 watts. When it's maybe up to 180 watts when it's running, and it runs about 50% of the time. However, when it first starts up, it uses about 1,800 watts, so about 1.8 kilowatts when it first starts up. That's the peak power of a refrigerator because it's a motor trying to start up. Um, and then once it starts running, then it's running at 180 watts. Um, but then there's about 10 minutes out of every 24-hour period where it does a defrost cycle, and electric elements turn on in there, and it runs for about 10 minutes. And during those 10 minutes, it's consuming about 800 watts on average. So this calculator takes into account what's the average kilowatts per day. It takes into account how much power it consumes while it's running and it's on, and then it also takes into account, okay, what's the high kilowatts that this might use or the maximum when that heating element is on, and then what's the startup power. Um, so that's how we get to some of these estimates down here in terms of inverter size. Okay, so a refrigerator uses about half of what a refrigerator is. It's about 1.25 kilowatts per day, and the startup is less. Then we don't have a sump pump. So all we do is how many refrigerators in the household do I have? Well, typically I've got 2 in my house. And I also have, actually I have a couple freezers in my house, but they're 2 small ones. So really it's just one big freezer effectively. And a sump pump, this is, some people have basements and you've got to run a sump pump sometimes. It's a very critical item. Otherwise, you're going to flood. And that sump pump actually, it doesn't consume a lot of power while it's running. It can consume a fair amount of power when it's running. So anyway, a well pump doesn't use a lot of power kilowatts per day. However, its startup is massive. Um, and so some of these have very high startup power, like a well pump or like central AC, and some of them don't. A microwave. If the grid's down and I'm going to heat my 3 meals a day with a microwave, I'm going to use maybe about half a kilowatt. It's it heats the food really fast and it uses a lot of power, like 1800 watts, but it doesn't run for very long. So it's pretty efficient at heating your food. Okay. But you can sort of see how, you know, in changing my, if I have a microwave and I'm heating my meals, it changes how much power I need. Um, I've had households where a hair dryer is an absolute critical item. They had four or five daughters. I think they had five daughters. Yeah. Um, so anyway, hopefully they're just going to use two at a time when the grid's down. Um, a coffee maker. A coffee maker is interesting. It consumes a lot more power than you'd think because it's that heating element underneath the coffee maker. Um, TV, and we all watch TV. Or if the grid's down, we really want to watch TV and find out why the grid's down. Um, okay, now here's some others. Here's a furnace fan. If you have a gas, um, then you're going to want to run a furnace fan in the wintertime to keep your house heated, um, even when the grid's down, so that you don't have freezing temperatures. So somebody raise their hand. Is there a question?
Feel free to also drop it in the chat box if you'd like us to answer any questions along the way.
I'll rely upon you guys to tell me if we have a question. Um, so I'm going to just show some examples here pretty quick. We have so let me explain a gas furnace. So I'm going to go ahead and change these. And let's see what we get down to. Okay. Okay. So I've got no major appliances, and I'm not using them for backup power, but I still need an inverter to run some things. So I can see how much a gas furnace takes. It uses about 6.8 kilowatt hours of battery to keep that house, an average household size warm. Um, if I'm dealing with a house that's 2,500 square feet, I probably only have one furnace fan. And if I'm dealing with a large house of maybe 5,000 square feet, I've got two furnace fans. Okay, so this tool scales pretty nicely. Um, now let's say I've got everything else off. I'm just dealing with, let's say I want to actually run my air conditioner when the grid's down. Well, if I've got an average house, I have only one furnace, okay? And I've got maybe, a usual house has about 1 ton of air conditioning per 500 square feet. So if I'm a 2,500 square foot house, I've got 5 tons of air conditioning, I've got a single furnace fan, and you can see I need a massive battery bank. I also need a pretty big inverter. Um, so when you try and introduce very large appliances, it's going to cost a lot. And the only way to do those kinds of situations is to use two systems, or more. So in this case, we would need two Sol-Ark inverters, actually, I'm sorry, here, um, and a very large battery bank to do that. However, if we can introduce some load management into the equation, um, then what we can do is um, we can reduce the size of that battery that we need by, let's say, we'll pre-cool the rooms and run the air conditioners during the daytime when we're producing a lot of PV. And so right in the afternoon time frame, we'll turn on the air conditioners and we'll start pre-cooling our bedrooms, and we're using solar energy instead of the battery energy. That way, once we get down to the nighttime, we're not having to work the battery so hard, and it really reduces the amount of cost of an ESS system. And that's why we have in here this smart loads type of. You can use a lot of there's different smart load solutions out there. I mentioned one, which is Lumen. There's others out there too. So it just, the overall cost decrease is well worth the load management option. By the way, we're in this tool, we're going to add another uh, column or option where we use a lot of load management. We use it more effectively. Let's say it's a bigger compromise for the customer, and they're willing to, hey, okay, I cannot run my gas dryer while the air conditioner's running. I'm fine with that. Or maybe in this case, maybe they're okay not running the air conditioner. So um, this is kind of how you compromise with a customer in sizing a system. So we'll have, no compromises. We'll have some compromise in just adding some load management, and then we'll have a much deeper load management solution where you're making a lot more compromises, but if the grid's down, it's not so bad. A lot of people are willing to compromise when it saves them, instead of buying two ESS systems, and typically an ESS system with a 20 kilowatt hour battery and a large inverter like ours, you're looking at about $20,000 to $25,000. So they're willing to compromise and just use one instead of two. A lot of times, it's very effective. So here we covered the air conditioner. If I just have a natural gas, if I'm just concerned about running, I have natural gas and I just want to run the electric during the keep the house warm, during the winter time and not have those Texas freezes that we had this year, then I'm not going to need that much energy, which is great. Okay, so let's see. Are there any questions here? We got the chat. Okay. Okay, I guess they work off. Okay, so somebody else is actually answering some questions for me. Great. If there's questions that can't be answered, please ask. I'm happy to answer. Are these inverters grid tied inverter or off grid? Okay, so our inverters work as grid tied. They can AC couple, DC couple. They can work with generators. They can they work off grid entirely, or they can work on grid. You can start off with no battery and just like a grid tie inverter and add batteries later, or it's a hybrid where you can do all kinds of things. You can do time of use, you can do peak shaving, you can, do a lot of different things with our inverters. But I'm mainly here to just talk about this tool, not our inverters. Okay, so if I have a gas hot water heater, okay, notice it doesn't affect anything because a gas hot water heater does not consume electricity. But hey, if that's what they have, put it in there. Okay, but interesting enough, an electric hot water heater actually consumes a lot of power, unfortunately, and it's a big cost in terms of usage. So if let me see here. So if I take a 10-minute shower per person, I need about 2.5 kilowatts of energy per person per day. So every time, well, actually, hold on here. I correct that. That's about two. So if I've got four people in a household, I'm going to need 8 kilowatts of a battery backup to run those showers. However, if I have load management is going to help shift that time, and it's going to keep that hot water heater off during the nighttime, and it's going to preheat the water during the daytime. Okay, and not use batteries. So that's some of the advantages of this tool, and as well as some load management. Got gas dryer. Gas dryer, well, now this one's a little bit tough because you're not usually doing the dryer every day. So we have to do some averaging of, let's say, maybe you're running it a couple times a week. Let's see. Oh, gas dryer is small. Electric dryer is huge. Unfortunately, it uses a lot of power. We've got stovetop gas, which uses nothing but for the igniters. It's really easy. Wall ovens, a lot of us have those. Let's see. I've had customers that are completely off grid that have to have their hot water heater on the Sol-Ark. That was a key necessary item for their luxury living. Anyway, and then we have level one car chargers. These use a lot of power. Oh, I'm sorry, level one is small. That's just an electric plug in the 110 outlet. But a level two car charger, my word, that consumes a lot of power. And really, you want to use load management or something that shifts that during the day to recharge that car. So let me reset this tool. Okay, and again, put in what I had. Okay, and let me show you an example. Wait a minute. Okay. Oh, I can't quite get it there. So if I wanted to go ahead and run my central AC, okay, and run my furnace fan, I'm looking at a very expensive option that is really unaffordable. So I can use some load management to bring that down, shift the time that the central AC is being used. Um, in addition, if I have a smaller home, they're going to have a smaller air conditioner for their bedrooms. And I'm only going to care about that to run when the grid's down. Like I said, we'll introduce another column for this for strong load management, which will bring this cost down even further. This does not include installation. It's just the cost of a typical cost of the battery, a typical cost for the inverter, and typical cost for the load management. And then if there's a federal tax credit and payments over a 20-year period. And we'll add some explanations in here in terms of these different, a little bit of better explanation of what these do and kind of identify some of the big consumers. Let's see. Planning on adding a heat pump water heater such as 50-gallon. Oh, heat pump hot water heaters are the best way to heat hot water, personally. Um, why? Because instead of using an electric hot water heater, and actually creating heat out of electricity, you're moving heat. You're using a heat pump. So these systems are about 4 times more efficient than a pure electric hot water heater, and I love them. And you get cold air, dehumidified air as a bonus. So if you're doing that, if you have 4 people taking showers, well, just put it to 1 because it's 4 times more efficient for a heat pump hot water heater. So I hope I answered that question. Okay. All right. So let's see. So like I said, in less than a week, we'll have a new version of this tool available. Some of the other areas where we would actually improve with load management, again, are things like a hot tub. So I think what we'll do is we'll identify some of these things that we can improve with load management and clearly identify those, things like a hot tub, a swimming pool pump that can run off of PV power. It doesn't need to run off batteries. A sauna, no, typically we're going to use that whenever we feel like it. A car charger, we can, at least a level 2 car charger, we would use time of use. Central AC, mini splits, hot water heater, we definitely use time of use, and furnace fans. So anyway, I hope that helps explain some of the tool. And we'll please send us emails at support@solark.com if you'd like to see enhancements to this tool or something's missing. We tried to make this as easy as possible. So what you can see here is, let's see, let me show a clear example. I'm trying to do AC. When the grid is down, let's see, I'm not going to do AC. I'm going to have a mini split in my bedroom, for example. And also I've got gas, so I've got a furnace fan. I'm going to heat the house. So I've got these two options. A mini split's very efficient, and it's great for cooling a bedroom or heating, even heating a bedroom too. So, and this is going to run my gas heat. By the way, you'll notice here that there's no electric heat. If you're all electric heat, forget about trying to do this with battery backup. It's not going to work. And what else would I want to run? I want to run my oven. I want to run my stove top, which is electric. I've got a dryer. I got 4 people. I got family visiting. Got to have the garage door opener. Uh, I don't know about you, but I like margaritas. And I still want to be able to charge my car, my wife's car. So, in an emergency. So if I look at the basics, got to have the coffee maker, got to watch TV, furnace fan. If I had no, if I just wanted to do all this stuff, I would need about a 44 kilowatt hour battery bank, and I need a large inverter. However, I can downsize this um, and decrease the cost of the battery and the inverter, so decrease the ESS. But like I said, I'm going to introduce another column because I think what we can do is we can have some more compromises and not necessarily run a gas dryer and a wall oven at the same time, or maybe a mini split. So there's a lot more capability here. Um, and below this, I think what we'll do is we'll add some clear examples. So please send us your feedback, and because we're always improving. And with that, I'd like to show some other slides. So here, I just want to compare a little bit, show you a little bit of comparison to the competition. So we all know about Tesla, that their battery does, it's a 5 kilowatt inverter with 14 kilowatts of storage per system. And they use NMC for their battery technology. So they get, but they actively cool it. So they get about 10 years out of the battery. And this is about $2,500, not installed. This is just the the um, the battery system, the electronics, along with a transfer switch, along with some load management as well. So then we've got Solar Edge, and they're about 7.6 kilowatts. They use LG Chem, so that's about a 20 kilowatt hour battery. However, it's not actively cooled, it's NMC, so it gets about 8.5 years. And if you look at their warranties there, it's about the same price. And they're using their backup interface to disconnect from the grid. Generac, their inverter on grid for time of use is 7.6 kilowatts, and if it's off grid, it's actually 9. So I'm using more the time of use, and they use actively cooled NMC, so they get about 10 years. And then here's us. Now with us, you have a choice in batteries. You don't have to use the battery that the inverter company specifies. You get choice. And so if it were me and my money, I would spend it on LFP technology because the batteries last a lot longer. You get about 16 years of cycling with LFP batteries versus actively cooled NMC or just passively cooled NMC. Then I'd use a load management solution, and I'd use a Sol-Ark 12K. So, um, comparing these solutions, and I should add Enphase up here, but we're number one in engineering support. We really do care about our customers, installers, and your customers can call us direct. We can help you size systems, we can do whatever, but a lot of times when we're sizing systems, we're going to use that tool. Anyway, with us, you're going to get, if we average the inverter power here, you're going to get about 10% more power out of the system, and a whole lot more peak power for off-grid kind of startup. But the biggest thing is the battery. The battery, you're going to get a whole lot more lifespan out of the battery, 16 years instead of an average of 9.5. And if you look at the cogs, the cogs are about the same. But if I add this up, I get about an 80% more value. And our customers tend to be really satisfied with us. And because we don't we don't want the installer to have to return. And we want the customer to have a great experience because we have these in our home. So that's why we don't like to let our customers down. So last thing is, our mission is just to make the most reliable, innovative, and affordable solar storage solutions for families and their businesses. That's it. And we really appreciate you guys, the installers and solar salespeople, because we really respect your feedback and want to keep improving no matter what. So with that, I'm open for any other further questions.